Thank you, Eric, and thank you for giving me yet another opportunity to address you all. I probably should have titled this talk, and now for something not completely different, but slightly different from what you've heard. And also, this is kind of a two-part thing where I'm going to talk about the regulatory framework that the FDA uses for evaluation of new and novel proteins and other things. And then my colleague, Christy Muldoon-Jacobs, will be talking about the exact systematic approach we take for the safety review of a novel protein. But I think it's important to do this part first because it will explain the process that we use, or the framework that we use. So what's significantly different here is that when FDA was established more than 100 years ago, the primary focus was safety. How do we ensure the safety of food and drugs in the United States? But the people who developed and started FDA were smart enough to recognize that there has to be an allowance for innovation. There has to be a way to not have to develop a rule every time you have something new come along, or will stifle innovation. And so throughout our regulations and our history, you'll see things that say, not do it exactly this way, but here's how we might review it. You can do it in an equivalent way if you can demonstrate that that approach is equivalent. And so this allows for a lot of innovation without us having to go through a specific rulemaking or act of Congress to allow us to do something. And so when innovative food comes along, we don't have to create a new regulation. We can fit it, or at least try to fit it into our existing framework and how we would approach that review process, which is a little different than how other countries are done or take this process. So in terms of food innovation, we've had to really consider this and how it would fit into our existing framework because it's advancing so quickly. We're really seeing, especially a movement among consumers to natural. We want natural sources of colors. We want natural sources of ingredients. We want natural sources. And in those specific production environments, you see different things. So it's not that particular item, while it's different, it's still a manufacturing process. So if you were to take an ingredient or a flavor that you would buy, that's manufactured. It's produced through a chemical process, it's a manufacturing process. It's not substantially different than another manufacturing process that might produce a cell line or a culture or a particular protein. So we follow the same things. There are obviously a wide range of products that fall into this category, and everything from a whole food to an individual protein or even precursors to proteins. But we have a long history of doing this. Just to give you a bit of a timeline, in 1990, we did our first evaluation of bovine chymotrypsin, which is an enzyme. At the time, it was believed that it would be particularly helpful in reducing allergenicity of things like casein. And so it was a food additive that would be used to help in the processing of a food product. In 2002, we looked at grass, which is generally recognized as safe for mycoprotein. In 2005, we genetically engineered lysine. And then hydrolyzed and unhydrolyzed pea protein, also grass. And then most recently in 2022, we completed the first consultation on a human food from cultured animal cells. And that is a little specialty item that we'll be talking about more today. So our regulatory framework is such that we approve things based on broad authority. So we have basically, if you eat it and it's considered food, that's us, except for USDA when it's a specific type of product. And we have both pre-market and post-market authority. So if something has to be submitted before it goes on to market. We have authority, and if something is after it's marketed, we also have authority to deal with those as well. We also have the authority to conduct case-by-case assessments, and this is somewhat different, where we often find that we have things that do not fall into a particular category, and then we can consider them as a case-by-case basis. And for some products, and I'll talk a little bit more about this, we have a crossover with our other agency, the United States Department of Agriculture, Food Safety Inspection Service. So in what can only be described as a complicated division of labor, the USDA has poultry, beef, pork, soliloforms, which commonly are known as catfish, under their authority, but they only regulate them when they get to harvest. So prior to, for example, a cow being taken to the slaughterhouse, that is not their authority. Their authority only begins when that animal is harvested. Also, things like game meat, so elk, for example, in the U.S., deer, alligators, those would be ours. Those are game meat, and those are FDA's. So it's a little gray line, but we can make that work. Within our programs, we have food ingredients, and this is where most of this falls. So you can either be a food additive or a color additive, and sometimes you're both. So I'll give you an example as it pertains to this particular topic of soy leg hemoglobin. Now, soy leg hemoglobin is a red color, just like regular mammalian hemoglobin, and it's what imparts the color to Impossible Foods' Impossible Burger. So when Impossible submitted this to us, they submitted two things. They submitted a GRAS application for soy leg hemoglobin as a flavor, which it was, and had been demonstrated for quite some time. But they were also required to submit a color additive petition because the addition of the soy leg hemoglobin was intended for a coloring purpose. So there were two things. It couldn't just fall into one area. Had they just said it was added as a color as opposed to a flavor, it would have just been considered a color additive. But in this case, it was both. There's also a food contact substance notification program. And you might think, well, how does this apply to proteins? Well, there's a lot of innovation in this area, particularly in packaging. Most recently, we've removed greaseproofing agents, PFAS-related greaseproofing agents from paper. So there's a lot of innovation now, and well, what do we use that's also greaseproofing but not a PFAS and has similar properties? And proteins are one of those things. So they would be maybe a more biocompatible type of coating, but that's where those types of things go. And they would contact food, and so they would fall under our food contact notification program. And then you've probably all heard about our much maligned, generally recognized as safe program, GRAS. And I'll talk a little bit more about this because it's actually a good program despite people's concerns about it. And I'll tell you why that is and give you a little bit more information about that. But the principle of GRAS is that you must be able to determine, we and everyone else in this room, that the safety determination you made was correct. So all the information you used to make that safety determination has to be publicly available. You can have what's called a GRAS committee or a GRAS determination of a group of people who are not FDA, or you can ask us to do it. But the information that committee does can't be secret. So it can't be secret ingredients, it can't be secret things, it can't be completely outside the public. Everything that's used to make that safety determination has to be public, or it's not GRAS. This is an important distinction. One other important distinction about GRAS and food additives, and again, I'll talk a little bit about this, is that a food additive is a regulation. So if you're approved as it's an actual rule. In GRAS, it's a notification program essentially. So it's in a different space. What's important about that is if in the future we decide that a particular compound or ingredient is not safe, and there's always evolving science in this area, we can say, we're removing it from grass almost immediately. It takes a very, very short period of time to remove something from grass. Whereas if something is a food ingredient or in food contact or a color additive, that's actually a rulemaking process. So we have to go through the entire process, and it's a very lengthy process for removal of something because we have to publish Federal Register, notice and comment. It's quite a long procedure, which is different than grass. So important thing about food additives, it's really any substance other than grass that you would add to food. And that is just a whole long list of things. And whether the substance is grass or it's a food additive, there has to be a reasonable certainty of no harm for the intended use. Now, this does not mean no harm or zero harm or a little bit of harm. It means it's a reasonable certainty of no harm. So, and there is a legal definition for this, but it does not mean that there is no harm or no risk associated with it. Generally recognized as safe. If it was used commonly before 1958, it's essentially something that is considered grass, commonly used in the food supply, and you can demonstrate that. And it's, as I mentioned before, it's more about the quality and quantity of information that's available. So in the case of a food ingredient, all of that information is provided in the rule that's published in the register. Everything else in grass is all publicly available prior to its submission to us. So if it's something that's grass and you say, oh, I'm going to have a grass determination, you can't go, all right, well, we're secret now, and then after we put it on the market, we're going to maybe make some of that information available. That's not grass. Has to be available, widely available before you put it on the market. The other important thing about grass is that you actually have to sell it for it to be grass. So we have a lot of complaints about, oh, we saw on company X that this compound is available as a grass substance, but we don't see it in your registry. Well, that's because it's not being sold. You know, this is something that the company wants to generate interest in, and they want people to think about using this ingredient, but it's not available in interstate commerce, which is what we regulate, and so it's essentially, to us, it doesn't exist, even though the company might be saying that it's a grass substance. And when it is actually introduced into commerce, if you are a large company or any company really, and you're being approached and you want to use this particular substance, that company will ask, do you essentially have a get out of jail free card from FDA, which is our, a good day letter essentially, or a letter that says, I can take this out. So it is in many respects very self-regulating because people just won't buy a product that doesn't have a letter from FDA that says we've reviewed it and looked at the information and determined that it is indeed safe. And then color additives we talked about a little bit as being any substance that imparts color, for the purpose of imparting some color. And they are specific, published in a rule. That's what it is. And so all color additives have a specific rule and regulation associated with their use. Again, a reasonable certainty of no harm. Just a word about post-market requirements. Where we see two things. Primarily labeling issues where things are just labeled incorrectly or labeled wrong. There's the marketing people have gotten a little over the edge and made claims that are not true or not correct. Also, allergen labeling is probably the #1 recall in the U.S. So things that are not labeled as containing allergens, one of the biggest labeling violations. And then we also have evolving science. So something that may have been approved 50 years ago, and this is a long history of the agency, and things have been in use for quite some time. New science evolves, and we have to be able to evaluate that science and then apply it in a way that keeps the food safe and the public safe. We've also started now publishing on our website things that are not grass. So, for example, the use of caffeine in alcoholic beverages. So putting that in an alcoholic beverages is not considered grass. And there's a list of them now on our website. You can go. We most recently had an interesting issue with a South American product of taro flour that was used in a cereal and was associated with illness. The company believed it was grass. It was clearly not grass. There was zero information about its safety and use. And so that's also listed on the website as not being grass. We're also wanting to be a bit more aggressive about our evaluation, or at least our systematic evaluation of products once they get on the market. There's so much evolving science about the safety of food and the interest of ingredients in food that we are undertaking a new process, and we had recently had a public meeting in September. Also more information on our website about how we're going to start a more systematic approach to the evaluation of things that are already on the market. So the role of USDA, I talked a little bit about that. Where it really kind of intersects with us in this particular case is we would approve a particular process. So the cells, let's say they're chicken cells, that's the one we did. The process for growing them, for creating them, for using them, up until the point where they are harvested is FDA's. But under the legal requirements of the U.S. food system, once they are harvested because they are beef or poultry, they fall under USDA's authority. And so USDA has authority on their harvest as well as the labeling of products that contain those cell products. FDA would have everything else. So if you were doing something like, game meat, let's say you use deer and you were making cultured deer cells, they would, or buffalo, bison is something that we would regulate, they would fall under our authority. A bit about Whole Foods. This is also another voluntary pre-market program similar to our pre-market program on cultured cells. So if you bioengineered something, and we have lots and lots of examples of this now, you would come to us and say, hey, we want to put beta-carotene in rice. And we would look at the process, we would evaluate the safety. We also evaluate these for both food and animal safety. So we assume that the production of a product like this might be diverted into animal agriculture or animal feed. And so our Center for Veterinary Medicine evaluates the safety of these products should they enter animal agriculture. I would say these probably represent a very small number of the types of products we see in this area. The most significant number we're seeing recently are what might be best described as those edited by CRISPR, where mostly knockouts and mostly things where you might be able to obtain them through traditional breeding, but we've used a more precise method of doing that type of thing. Transparency. I cannot tell you how important it is that people know what we're doing here. And so we have public meetings all the time on this type of approach. The consumers are becoming more and more interested in how we do these evaluations, where the safety information is, how to find it, what happens. And so we are trying to keep up with all of the interest from consumers. we also get a lot of interest from industry. Industry would like to know who is submitting what, how are they submitting it, is it something we can use, have you given it a sort of an FDA stamp of approval? And we also do significant amount of consults to state governments as well as foreign governments. People in this room, we talk regularly, we have very similar products entering all of our work streams, and so I think it's really valuable and important that we do work together when possible. We maintain inventories, public inventories of all of these products. This is probably impossible for you to see or read, but if you were to go to our website on food additives, food ingredients, color additives, you can look through all of them. There's new plant variety consultations, so on and so forth. So how do we support food innovation? We believe that food innovation is going to happen whether we like it or not. We also want to support it in a way that makes it safe. We've done that by telling people, come see us early, talk to us early. Whether you be a foreign government, an innovator, it's free, it doesn't cost anything. We can do this virtually, we can do it in person. We often have interest from venture capitalists that are working with an innovator. So the innovator can bring the venture capitalist to talk about timelines if and when they submit. A consultation is not public. We keep a record, obviously, that a company came and talked to us about a product, but the details of that discussion are not disclosed until such time as they would submit a formal application to us for review. So we can talk to you as much as you like about whether these products, and in fact, this has actually probably saved quite a lot of money because a number of firms have what they think are really good ideas that after we talk to them turn out not to be really good ideas. And they're not going to be commercially viable for a number of reasons. So I would encourage you, please, 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 it's free, come and talk to us. We would like to hear from you before rather than after you spend a whole lot of money doing things that probably weren't ever going to lead to a product being approved. And then how to get started. We have a website on how to start a food business. And you can call us if you don't like that or don't look at it. You can talk about our ingredients. You can send notes to our ingredients, plant biotechnology, foods and animal culture. The landing page is food ingredients and packaging. Our website, admittedly, is not the easiest to navigate, but we can help you with that as well. So I think hopefully I finished in time.
Thanks, Steve.